Hi guys, so we are finally here making that curly hair tutorial that I promised you guys like a year ago, but I guess it's better late than never, right? So let's just jump right into it. The first topic that I want to cover right off the bat is that not all curly hair is the same. Like, curly hair is not just like a universal kind of topic, and all curly hair is exactly the same. I have curly hair myself, and if you guys don't have curly hair, there's a lot of different types, and there's actually like this classification system for it that goes from wavy hair to curly hair to coily hair and then into like a textured or a kinky textured hair. And just want to say right now, though, I'm not going to be covering that kinky or textured hair type, simply because this is a sketching video. And when I'm drawing that kind of curl type, what I tend to do is kind of draw the overall shape. And then instead of like drawing in all those individual tiny little curls, what I do is I just use the shading and light, so the coloring phase and the rendering phase, to kind of carve out some of the curls and some of that texture. So if I do like a hair coloring tutorial in the future, I will cover that technique, but that's just why I'm not covering it in this video. Okay, so we're gonna start really basic, just bringing it back to basic shapes, guys, because I know curls can get like super overwhelming. They look so complicated, but at its most basic level, a curl is just a kind of flat surface that is twisting around itself. So one thing you can visualize, and that's what I'm drawing right now, is think like a strip of paper. You have a front side, you have a back side, and pick up that strip of paper and kind of twist it around itself so it forms a kind of spiral shape. At the most basic level, this is what a curl is. And some curls are tighter and some curls are looser, so you can kind of play with that. But if you can just draw this basic shape, you can draw curly hair. And then what we're gonna do is go through and add more details onto the basic shape, so it looks like an actual curl with life and dimension and not like a strip of paper, you know what I mean? And that brings me to a concept we're going to be talking about a lot in this video, which is big, medium, small. So the first step for me is focusing on the big shapes. So what I'm doing is I'm literally just very lightly kind of laying out what I want the general shape of the hair to be. Think like silhouette, think movement. If you ever have the trouble with curly hair or hair in general where you feel like it just feels like a helmet, or it lacks movement or flow, or it feels very stiff, it may be because you're skipping this phase where you get those really loose lines and general shape down on paper. I always find that for myself, if I go in and I just get bogged down in the details, which is very easy to do with curly hair, I lose the kind of flow of the piece, and I end up with hair that looks really heavy and doesn't have that kind of buoyancy and bounce. So this phase for me is like super duper helpful and super duper important. And this kind of concept of big, medium, small, it can work for kind of the overall sort of composition of the face and the hair and everything, but it can also work for kind of individual strands. And I'm going to lay that out now. First one I'm going to focus on is more of like a wavy slash very loose curly hair. And what you see me doing here is kind of laying out the general spiral shape. It's nothing spectacular. I mean, it's fine, but then what I start doing after that is kind of carving it out and breaking it up into more of a kind of a medium shape. This is the medium phase, focusing on the medium shapes and just breaking up those big chunks, because hair, it twists around itself, it moves, it like blows in the wind. It's not perfect. I mean, unless you have a lot of hairspray, I don't know, but generally it's not perfect. So this is where you kind of start breaking it up. And so I kind of break up the larger chunks into more medium shapes, and then I go in and I add all these kind of loose strands that kind of, for me, these loose strands sticking out just give the hair a lot of life, a lot of movement. It makes it feel very real, very lived in. So that's kind of the general idea. So big shape here, and then we go into medium shapes, and then we go into the small shapes. And this pretty much works for whatever kind of hair type or curly hair type you're drawing. Alright, so let's see how this concept works for like an overall hairstyle. And this character, we're going for more of like a loose curl type texture. So you can see the shapes that I'm kind of loosely roughing in right now are kind of resembling that sort of general spiral shape, and even throwing in a little bit of waves in there as well. One tip with curly hair is, especially if you're drawing natural curly hair, so someone who naturally has curly hair, is to understand that all of the curls are not going to be uniform. They Curly hair kind of has a mind of its own, and it just kind of does what it wants. So there's going to be inconsistencies in curl types even across like the same person. So like one person could have some parts of their hair where it's more wavy and some parts of their hair with more curly. So kind of keep that in mind. And then sort of across individual curls, you can have sections of the curls where it's looser, sections of the curls where it's tighter. So just kind of keep in mind it does not have to be perfect. So just like don't feel like you need to get bogged down in like making each curl like absolutely perfect. The more loose and almost messy you can be, the more kind of realistic the curls will be. And then at this point, once I kind of have the general medium shapes of the curled chunks sort of laid out, I can go in and start adding more of those details, the individual strands, breaking them up a little more. I like to kind of add like little pieces where the curl will actually break apart and then come back together, and then like little loose strands coming out and going back in. Just kind of play with it. And I usually, when I'm drawing hair, I erase like so dang much. You're not seeing it in this video because I went through and edited all of that out, because it's just a little jarring watching me like constantly reaching for the darn eraser like across the page. It's just kind of annoying. But just know that I am literally erasing like every couple pencil marks, just kind of working it out and letting the hair sort of tell me where it wants to go, if that makes sense. I don't know. Okay, so now we're gonna move on to more of like a tighter curly hairstyle, and just kind of break that down in the exact same way we did with the previous one. And you can see with this style, the actual curls are a lot closer together. So the shape that I'm actually building out before this, I'm kind of thinking in almost like a sort of cylinder shape going down, and then breaking that up into almost like individual squares that are like connected by the back side of the spiral. I am so bad at explaining this, but hopefully you guys can kind of visually see what I'm going for. So again, it's breaking out the big shapes and then going in, and here I'm kind of like breaking them up, putting like lines across them, and just kind of breaking up the shapes so it feels more kind of realistic. And then after that you go in and you add like the loose strands and everything from there. And with this kind of curl, the tighter the curl gets, the more kind of prominent the shading will be, and it'll make it feel really 3D. So you can add kind of like a darker shading to like the inside of the spirals and the back end of the spirals to kind of make it feel like it is curling around itself and that it does have dimension. So let's see how this works in like a full hairstyle. Again, just going through and hashing out the medium shapes that were going on here. I was going for kind of like a curly bangs type hairstyle. I love curly bangs. I think they're so cute. And then just like hashing out the spirals and thinking more in terms of like a solid sort of cylinder type thing, and then breaking it out into smaller pieces. And this style is definitely pretty exaggerated. Typically, the curls would be a lot smaller than this, but this is art, guys. The beauty of art is you can do what you want, and I was just feeling these huge, like almost vintage feeling ringlets for this character, so that's what I did. And just in general, I want you guys to know that with this tutorial, the absolute last thing I want to do is to make you guys feel like you need to change your style or draw these things in my style. Like, no, that's not the point of these. I'm hoping that you guys will be able to take these kind of concepts and apply them to your own style. So whether you have a more cartoony style or you have a more realistic style, whatever, these are just kind of general concepts that you can apply to what you already do to maybe understand curly hair better. So, speaking of that, one concept that I want you guys to look out for as you're drawing hair is the idea of parallels. Now, if you want to draw kind of hair that looks like it is naturally curly, you'll find that there's not a lot of parallel strands or strands that are curling in the exact same way right next to each other. This is more of a phenomenon that happens if you're like curling your hair like with a curling wand or something, whereas like naturally curly hair, you know, it's not going to have a lot of that uniformity. So it's just something to kind of look out for as you are drawing curly hair, is just kind of keep in mind, look for parallels, and if you see like a lot of strands that are doing exactly the same thing, just try breaking it up a little bit, changing one a little bit, making this one a little thicker, making that one a little thinner, whatever you got to do. It just really helps the hair, especially curly hair, feel a lot more natural. So at this point with this hairstyle, I'm just kind of breaking up those shapes and adding in those smaller details and the loose strands and everything like that. I know I just keep going on about this big, medium, small thing, but it just really helped me. Yeah, another thing that you can keep in mind when you're drawing curly hair styles is that you'll find a lot of times the curls will be a lot looser up at the top of the head, and as they get down towards the bottom of the strand of hair, the curls will get a lot tighter, and that's just because gravity, at the top of the hair, you have the entire weight of the hair weighing itself down, so the curls actually get stretched out. Whereas at the end of the hair, there's not that weight of the hair strand, so it's able to form a lot tighter spirals. So just adding that kind of variety in the tightness of the curl from the root to the tip is going to add a lot of dimension, and it's going to make it feel a lot more realistic, a lot more bouncy, and yeah. Okay, so the last hair type we're going to be covering in this video is like a tighter, coily type hairstyle. And you can see with this one, the shape that I'm starting with is literally just like a weird sort of narrowing cylinder type shape. And then from there, you kind of just break it into these rectangles, and you don't even really have much space between the winds of the curl because the curl is so tight around itself. You don't really have that space there. So I find this kind of hairstyle the easiest to draw because you literally just draw these rectangles that are kind of cascading down in like a cylinder. That's a really bad description of it, but I don't know, that's kind of how I think about it. The way for me with art, I like to just simplify things to the simplest, most shape that I can. Like, shape is so sort of important to me in my art and sort of how I break down the art that I create. And so that's kind of the way my mind works. I don't know if that is the same for you guys, but if I can break it down into like simple shapes like a cylinder and some squares, like that just makes it so much easier for my brain to understand. But anyway, I hope this tutorial was somewhat helpful. I feel like my tutorials are always like all over the place because, again, like I don't want to tell you guys how to draw something. I just want to kind of share things that help me figure out how to draw things, and maybe it'll help you too. I don't know if that's useful at all, but it's just kind of the style that I like doing tutorials. So I hope this helped. Let me know in the comments if you have any other like specific questions about curly hair that you'd want me to address, and we can kind of like talk about it there or whatever. But thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!